And the three things that my fellowship director told us that we needed to do to be successful is, in order, it's going to be availability, affability, and ability. If you can achieve all three of those things in medicine, that's how you become successful.
Hi everyone, I'm William Santana. I'm here at the University of Florida at the medical school. I'm gladly here with Dr. Pouya Ameli, one of the attendings from the NeurocriticalCare team, and he works at the Neuro ICU, and it is like our first international guest to be around on our podcast and our show. So it's a real honor to me to have him here and to have this opportunity to talk with him some aspects of his daily life as a physician and what he do and what he has to share with us about his experience and, life experience, not only medical experience. So for us, it's a great honor to have you here, Dr. Ameli. Please, I'll let you introduce yourself and speak with our audience what you do and what you have to share with us. Thank you for having me here.
Well, I very much appreciate you inviting me here. As I was so graciously introduced, my name is Pouya Ameli. I am a neurologist who also does neurocritical care. So that means I did both neurology training and then a neurocritical care fellowship. I spend most of my time these days working in our neuro ICU here at the University of Florida. I also teach our medical students and our fellows and our residents here, giving various lectures, helping to put on simulations. I also have a role. I created a program along with a bunch of amazing undergraduate students called Medigators and MediFutures, which is focused on helping students from all kinds of backgrounds understand various health careers and helping them to navigate the path towards pursuing that career. Personally, I was born in Iran. My family moved to the United States when I was about 3 years old. We ended up kind of jumping around a little bit and ultimately ended up here in Florida. I actually grew up in Orlando. My parents and my brother still live there. Went to actually here, the University of Florida, for undergrad. I left, and Gainesville's not the biggest town in the world, so I wasn't sure that I would come back. Ended up getting a master's degree at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, and then I ended up going to medical school there as well. It was a newer medical school that had been just built, and so they were giving some incentives to recruit students, and that was very appealing to me, but also the idea of coming in and building this new medical school was a cool opportunity, and I learned a lot from that. I then did my neurology residency up in Nashville, Tennessee at Vanderbilt University, and then I did my neurocritical care fellowship in Atlanta, Georgia at Emory University. And then I came here. To everyone's surprise, I ended up back in Gainesville.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So, Dr. Ameli, we talked about some things like in the career of a physician during my observership, my period here in the neuro ICU. There's one thing I remember for my first day with you. You told about 3 things that a good student and a good resident has to be. I think we can start with that. I think you remember.
Yeah, I definitely remember. So I have to be honest, the credit for this actually goes to my fellowship director. I think you get in medical school, I think in medicine and healthcare in general, you get a lot of feedback, maybe more than you might get in a lot of other careers. Like, people are constantly trying to tell you how to get better. And it wasn't until I got into fellowship that I heard somebody really explain what you needed to do to be successful so eloquently. And so I kind of stole it, and I use it myself when I'm talking to my students as well. And the three things that my fellowship director told us that we needed to do to be successful is, in order, it's going to be availability, affability, and ability. And so what that means is, so that the first one is availability. So let's say you're an intern and working in a hospital, and a nurse calls you and they're very concerned about this patient, right? Let's say you show up and you are available, but you are not very affable, which means you're not very nice. You know, you're kind of irritable, you're a little bit mean about it, and you're not very able, meaning you're just getting started, you're an intern. People can kind of tell you don't know what you're doing yet. Being available and just showing up every time they call you counts for something, right? People will say, well, you know, he doesn't really know what he's doing yet, and he's kind of mean, but every time I call him, he always comes, right? And I think that engenders a little bit of trust that you may not otherwise have had. Now, let's say you take it a step further, right? The second most important thing is affability, meaning they call you, you're available, I mean, you come, and you're nice about it. But let's say you're still not very able, right? You're not capable, you don't know what you're doing yet. You show up, you're really nice, and they can kind of tell, like, okay, this person needs a little help. That's usually the person that nurses and the staff will take under their shoulder and try to say, like, okay, let's help him. You know, like, he has so much potential, he's a very good guy, we can tell he's a good guy, we want him to be successful. And they pull you aside and they teach you things, and they try to push you up, and they try to make you more effective at your job. And people do that because you have shown them that you care, right? You come, every time they call you, you come, and you're nice about it, and you understand that this is a very smart person who studied for a long time to get into their job, and they're calling you and they're asking you for help, right? And then the last thing is ability. So let's say you go on through your residency, you pick up a bunch of skills, you get really knowledgeable, and then finally when the people call you, right, they know that you're going to come, they know that you're going to be nice about it, right? You're going to try to be helpful, you're not going to be angry that they called you, and then you're actually going to know what you're doing. What you say and what you do is going to be helpful. That's the person who's golden, right? If you can achieve all three of those things in medicine, that's how you become successful. And it sounds, when you break it down into these three very simple concepts, it sounds super easy, like, oh yeah, but you'd be very surprised. When you go around in the world and you look around, it's not that common that you find a physician who is really doing a good job at all three of those things. And so that's the formula. It's not complicated, but I think that's how you become successful in medicine, is you just focus on those three things.
That's interesting. I remember that from our first day, and I've been like thinking about it, and I will take advantage of this opportunity to ask you, if like a student or a resident doesn't have all the three, or as you said, it's difficult to see like a physician who had all the three, but if you had to start working with like one at a time, one of each at a time, how you see what's the better, or what is the most important thing to start working on this three? It's like in that particular order: availability, affability, and ability, or you think it's like different? How we can improve on that as a student and as a resident?
Yeah, I would say it's really interesting because I think it sometimes shifts depending on where you're at in your career. So in medical school, essentially the main thing that we focus on is ability. right? Which is the number 3 thing, right? So we test you and see how much you know, what can you do? Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? And that's the big focus, right? That's what you get graded on. That's what gets put on your transcript. That's what kind of stays with you as you go off. And later on, people ask you for, your records from medical school. That's the grades that are going to come, right? They don't really get grades on how available you are or how nice you were, right? And so in medical school, that's what we focus on. Unfortunately, I think medical school education is a little bit lacking in that in the real world, when you go out and actually get a job, so when you become a resident or a fellow, your ability actually is the 3rd most important thing, right? Your availability and your affability are going to be number 1 and number 2, right? In terms of like the people who become successful and do well in life are the ones who, number 1, show up. So if I have a fellow or a resident that maybe is really smart, but even the smartest of residents, right, have a lot to learn, right? Actually having the knowledge and being able to apply that knowledge to the patient are 2 different things. And so I think the order of importance in terms of my teaching is really the order of importance in terms of success, right? How are you going to learn if you didn't see the patient? Like, you need to be available, right? You have to go. And I think a lot of times when students are not, like residents or fellows are not available, I think their lack of availability is rooted in something that's going on with them. If they're not showing up when nurses are calling them, it's because they probably feel overwhelmed. They're feeling this sense of like all this pressure, and maybe they have something going on in their personal life. And I think the approach to that is you can go up to them and yell at them and say, like, you have to do this, and I can't believe it. How could you possibly not go see this patient? But I don't think that's helpful, right? Typically what you need to do is go up to them and say, like, hey, what happened? And then just let them talk, right? And usually when they talk, you kind of get an idea of what's happening. You can ask some follow-up questions and really dive into the core, right? Oftentimes those residents need to feel supported, right? They need somebody to tell them that, like, I believe in you. I know this is hard. There's a reason why not everybody does this career, right? It's hard. And so you have to understand that because it's hard doesn't mean you're not meant to be here. It means that you have to just keep pushing and go through it. And eventually you're going to get to the point where it's going to make sense, right? And it's going to be easier for you. But you just have to develop those skills, right? So I think that's number 1. Number 2, being affable. I think if somebody's not nice, it's similar things, right? They're stressed out, they're overwhelmed, and it's just reminding them that if somebody calls you with a consult and you're mad at them for calling you with this consult, a lot of times you're mad at them because you're overwhelmed, because maybe the consult subject is something that you're not very comfortable with, right? Or you're not very efficient at seeing all of your patients and getting everything done, and so you're mad at them. But the consult question is not an unreasonable question, right? This is a very smart person asking you for help. And so helping students at all levels kind of remember that, I think, frames it differently for them and also puts them in a mental place where they can be not just kinder to others, but just more forgiving to themselves. And I think that enables you to be more effective at the 3 A's, right?
Right. That's a good picture of how we can understand better this concepts, like in the different moments of the medical education, because as you said, it can shift from medical school to residency to fellowships, like different abilities are tested in different scenarios.
Yeah, but the biggest test is the test of life. In the test of life, it's availability, affability, ability.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective for, especially for those in our audience which are already working and are residents or fellows, and so it's a thing to pay attention.
Yeah,
a very, very good tip. So, Dr. Ameli, you did like medical school, neurology, and neurocritical care, right?
I did.
So can you talk about what was the thing that inspired you to pursue a medical career, like from the beginning, and then what made your mind like for going into neurology, and then from neurology going to neurocritical care? Like, what was the purpose or is the purpose that drives you in this career?
Yeah, so I've thought about this a lot. There was a time in my life where I really wasn't sure that the time and the effort required to become a physician was something I really wanted to do. Some people look at the very long journey of going through medical school and residency and all that stuff, and it's exciting to them, and they're happy to do it. And I think for me, I eventually got there, but there was a period of time where I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of work for a long, long time. Like, is it really, really that worth it? Is that really what I want to do? And I think for me, what ultimately, I've reflected on this a lot. What kind of pushed me into medicine was something that kind of was given to me at a very young age. So I was born in Iran. Unfortunately, when I was about 3 years old, a big war broke out between Iran and Iraq. And one night, a bomb was dropped on the city where I lived, and an entire branch of my family died. And so my last memories of Iran are going to their funeral and being there the night that the bombing was happening, and kind of we had a little shelter that we were in, and we can hear everything that was going on outside, and then knowing that my parents wanted to immediately, like, this is not a place to raise children anymore. So we left, and we ended up moving to the United States ultimately after kind of going around to India and Turkey, and we got visas to come to the United States and reestablish life. And my parents' goal was only to just give me an opportunity to be the best version of myself that I could be. Going through a lot of that, my parents did a really good job of never really hiding that from me. They shielded me from some things that I really maybe didn't need to know about as a child. But for the most part, I think my parents did a very good job of being very open and honest with me and saying, like, this is the world. This is the world we live in. This is what happened. This is why we're here. And from a very young age, it kind of made me think about, like, why do people like do these things to each other? Why do people act the way that they act? Why do people believe the things that they believe? And so naturally, as I went through school, I kind of thought about a lot of those things and the differences between different types of people. And I just kind of spent a lot of time like paying attention to those things that maybe a lot of other kids my age didn't pay as much attention to. So when I got to college, I majored in philosophy because it was like, of course, that's what I'm going to do. And as a philosophy major, I spent a lot of time thinking about, what I wanted to do and what was the meaning of life and why am I here and what am I to take away from this time that I have on this earth, right? And it was a time of like exploration for me when I was an undergrad. I spent a lot of time kind of going out and just learning about lots of cultures, lots of different, people in society. I did a lot of volunteering. I graduated my undergrad with well over 1,000 hours of volunteer work. And it was because I had done, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I went to like a medical mission trip. I ended up working with the homeless for a while. I worked with kids with disabilities. I worked on environmental issues. I just kind of was putting myself out in the world and just trying to see what's out there, learn about everything as much as I could. And once I had done all of that, right, I graduated. I ended up being faced with this like, okay, well, what do you want to do now? And I had thought about the idea of going to medical school, right? That had, I was always kind of good at math and science, and I enjoyed the idea of like talking with people and helping people overcome diseases and that kind of stuff. And so the concept of medicine was appealing, right? The work of medicine and the actual, like the reality of medicine was the thing that kind of made me think twice. After I graduated, I spent some time working. I worked in a blood bank, drawing blood from patients. And then I also worked in the hospital at the lab, I was the person who, when you draw blood and you send it and you want to know what the sodium is, I was the one who spun it down, take the serum off, put it in the machine, all that kind of, ran the labs. And so it was an enjoyable job, but after about like 3 or 4 months of it, I realized I was like, I can't do this forever. Like, this is not for me. Like, it's not something that I'm passionate about that I can do for the rest of my life. And it really made me think like, okay, what do I actually want to do? And at that point, the work of going to grad school or med school, the work that was involved seemed much more appealing, right? Like, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm totally willing to do that. I think that now I've matured to the point where I think that that's something that I actually want to pursue. And then ultimately I pursued medical school. And if you took, 100 philosophy majors and you put them in medical school, I bet a lot of them end up in neurology because it just kind of, it fits, right? It's a very cerebral field, right? Pun intended. It's something where you have to really understand a lot of very abstract concepts. And so that came kind of naturally to me. I just found it really interesting. And, the brain is what makes us who we are. And what makes us who we are is also one of the biggest questions that we try to answer in philosophy.
Right.
And so, it was very natural. There was a significant period of time where I thought about doing neurosurgery, but I'm just not a surgeon. I'm not somebody who can sit in an operating room all day, and it wasn't as exciting for me as it is for other people. I thought I found myself bored a lot in the operating room. So ultimately I realized what I liked about neurosurgery was the acuity, right? Like somebody is dying, you have to do something. And so I found that in neurocritical care. And so that's essentially, my journey. I think if I look back on it, it kind of all connects, right? At the time, I didn't always see a purpose to every step of the way, but when I look back on it, it's like, it's obvious, right? Like I feel like, I'm living the life that I was meant to live.
Very cool. Like the Steve Jobs speech on Stanford, he says like, you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Yeah.
You can't connect the dots looking forward.
Yeah, that's 100% true for me. I think throughout my career, as I've gotten older, I realized that times where I thought I was just kind of like, messing around, I really wasn't achieving anything or doing much. I actually see purpose to those times of my life now, because I see that even when I wasn't necessarily like, I don't know, working towards a degree or, writing a paper or doing, something very tangible, I was putting myself out there in the world, and I was learning and growing and becoming the person that I am today. And all of those like experiences have come together in me and allowed me to be the person I am when I'm interacting with my patients, my colleagues, my students, my fellows, my residents, my family. Like this is the things that have made me who I am, and gives me a sense of gratitude because I like who I am. I think my life is exciting.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Very, very good answer. In your career, how you managed to overcome like the obstacles that showed up in your career, the difficulties? What do you like? What are the abilities you see that are important to a physician to have to overcome like the difficulties of this job, which is which has like a lot of responsibility and sometimes a lot of pressure, and how you manage that?
For me, medicine has a lot of challenges, especially in the United States, where we have like a very unique healthcare system with some unique challenges. I think it's very easy to get disillusioned and to become somebody who kind of loses sight of the purpose, right? And that's actually something that's pretty well documented, at least in the United States, that, when we go to medical school, we come in with this like grandiose idea of everything we want it to be and we want to achieve and how we're going to change the world and help patients and, really make a difference. And as you get into the grind of medical school and medicine, right, it's all about like results and numbers and this is what you have to achieve and this is what it is and this is that. And it's very easy throughout the process to lose the humanism in you. It's very easy to just kind of see it as like this task and this thing that we have to do and become very rote. And that doesn't stop after you graduate, right? You graduate from medical school, there's going to be a hospital administrator or a politician or somebody who tells you that like, this is how you need to practice and I'm going to ban this and I'm going to do that. And there's a lot of people who are going to want to tell you how to do this job, this very, very important job that affects everyone in society, right? So it makes sense that a lot of people are going to have opinions on it. And people can get crushed under that pressure. For me, what has worked is reminding myself of the reasons why I went into this career, right? So when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling like this job is just too hard, it's too much, they're not being reasonable, my response is often to spend more time with my patients, with my colleagues, with my students, and be very deliberate about it and remind myself that the reason I got into this was to help, right? To help my patients directly, but also help them indirectly by creating an environment where people can thrive, right? Where my colleagues and my residents and my students can be the best versions of themselves and learn and grow and just go on to take really good care of patients into the future. And I think there's a lot of honor in that, right? And they can take away my pay, they can take away my abilities to do certain things and try to dictate how I'm going to practice medicine, and they can do a lot of things, but they're never going to take away that honor, right? The notion that I can show up to work every day and whatever the circumstances might be, try to help everybody around me take the best care of patients that we can take and provide a service to society, they're not going to take that away. They can't.
Yeah, it's a very positive way of seeing things, like to overcome the difficulties of the daily life as a physician.
It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Just like everyone else's everybody has their coping mechanisms. That's just mine.
So, like, moving on this direction of sometimes, like in medical, like in the medical profession as a physician, like in the career, there are some challenges, and there are some patients which their stories and their cases leaves us in us like a mark, And do you have a particular story of a patient which comes in your mind that really changed you in a way to make you a better person?
Yeah. I think anybody who goes into medicine and does it with intent is going to have 100 of those stories, right? We say that we're here to treat our patients and teach, but really we also, if you're doing medicine the right way, I think you also learn a lot. I learn a lot from my patients, and I think if you listen carefully, they will teach you very many, many, many things. One of my favorite cases that will stick with me forever just because of the meaning that it carries for me is a young man that I saw when I was in fellowship. This man had come into the hospital. He had fallen and developed a pretty small bleed on his head and got admitted to the ICU just for monitoring. We were just kind of watching him just to make sure everything was okay. He came to us with a history of violence. This gentleman had actually been in jail before for domestic abuse. Had beat up the mother of his children, his former wife. He got divorced, ended up going to jail, lost his job. I want to say he actually was in school and lost his position in school as well. And while he was in our ICU, he was recovering very well from his bleed, really kind of a very uneventful, somebody who's going to be there for a very short period of time and then leave the ICU quickly. One afternoon, the nurse was going into the room to check on him, and suddenly you hear screaming, like, "Oh my God, something is happening!" Look. Anyway, so everybody runs over there. There's, our nurse practitioner and our PAs, and everybody ran in that direction, and they grabbed the nurse and they're pulling her out of the room, and the patient was on top of her, actually just like punching her like this and that, this other stuff. And so we call all these people, and everybody eventually, they're pulling the nurse one way, they're pulling the patient the other way. And, I think initially everybody's thinking like, okay, like this is just a guy who has a history of violence. Maybe he has a personality disorder and he's just being violent. And as we're pulling him off of the nurse, suddenly like his demeanor just changes. And he suddenly starts going like, I'm sorry. And he just like seemed like he just became a different person out of nowhere. And it was a very like striking change in who he was to me. Like, it's not, as somebody who's been around a lot, I do neurology, right? There's a lot of very unusual behavior, right? There's violent patients and, all that kind of stuff. It was very kind of just like striking how his personality changed. And what we ended up figuring out over the course of the next few days, my attendings and I discussed it, was we hooked him up to EEG and realized that his outburst of violence was ictal. It was a frontal lobe seizure. And he was a very young gentleman who happened to be Black. And I think a lot of assumptions were made about him when this event initially occurred. And he had paid a very high price for for just having epilepsy. I learned a lot from that case because, one, it reminded me that no matter what sins someone has committed in the past, that it's my job to not judge them and just treat them as human to the best of my ability, and recognize that I may not always have the full story. It made me think about the biases that I have when I enter those various relationships with patients, and how I might unconsciously perceive things differently depending upon somebody's race or ethnicity or nationality, and how I might not treat them as much of a human as I otherwise could have. And it just kind of it made me think about a lot of things that I think are prevalent in society, right? Made me think about my own humanity and how I'm put into this position where I can make decisions that can really have really giant impacts on people's life, right? I can do things or not do things that can really change the course of someone's life. And the assumption is that I'm somehow capable of making the correct decision all the time, and I'm perfect somehow, when I'm not, right? So I thought about a lot of, other patients, who else has had this happen around me that I didn't necessarily recognize? Who have I harmed? And it was very humbling to realize that this person had gone through probably many evaluations by physicians at various points, in jail and so on, and no one had ever thought that this nice young man is supposed to be the same violent person that did all this other stuff. Like, that doesn't make sense. And just, if he had gotten an EEG 10 or 15 years earlier, like, who knows where he would be in his life. It's crazy.
That's a very intense story.
Yeah.
Very intense.
Yeah. It's, yeah. I mean, that's why I remember it.
Whoa. Yeah, I think this, yeah, I was hearing you tell this story and thinking about this judgment position. Sometimes it's normal for the human being sometimes to judge other people. Yeah, I try to avoid, but it's a daily exercise, not being judging people for what they have done, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting example, and thanks for sharing it.
Yeah. I think sometimes a lot of the people who do the things that they do, even if, let's say, he was a violent person and it wasn't a seizure, even a lot of those people, I think, have never really had somebody tell them, like, you know, I believe in you, you're valuable, I'm here for you. And I think, you know, a lot of us, and, you know, I can speak for myself, I'm very lucky to grow up in a situation where my parents, even despite challenges that we had, you know, always believed in me, always made me feel like supported and safe to the best of their ability, you know, even despite the stresses that they were carrying on their shoulders. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's important to recognize that not everybody has that.
Very, very interesting story.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this whole story and things we can learn during our journey, like to grow up and to become better as human beings and as a person, as a professional. And for us as a medical students, it's always valuable to have people to guide us, to serve as mentors, as people who are willing to share with us their experience. So in this way, thinking about giving advice, because you do that with mitigators, and it's like you already is used to be in this position. So what advices you can share with us, especially for medical students and medical and residents, apart from those three characteristics we already discussed about, what you have to share about advices to become better as student, to become better as a future medical doctors and as a person.
So, you know, I could say 1,000 things. Right now, I think for me in particular, I think one of the most powerful lessons that I've learned is when I was, you know, even through medical school, I often saw the world as a meritocracy, meaning that I thought that the people who achieve the highest positions in the world are the ones who have the greatest amount of knowledge, the hardest work, and, you know, these sorts of things. You know, the ones who are in charge are the ones who deserve to be in charge based on the amount of work and effort that they've put in. As I've grown up, I've realized that the world is not a meritocracy, right? Your knowledge and your hard work matters, for sure. It matters. But to act like it's the only thing, I think, is not true. That's why, you know, ability is number 3, right? It's going to be availability and affability are number 1, which are not things that you have to learn in school, right? Availability and affability are things that you've learned at home, from your family, from your environment, right? And so to me, when I think about that and I realize that the world is not a place where, if you study really hard and you learn all of this stuff, you get high positions, it makes sense that people who are from backgrounds where, maybe they grew up in poverty, or maybe they're just from a different culture and they didn't socialize in the same kind of environment as the people who are in power, they have a hard time reaching those positions, right? And here in the United States, we talk about equity and inclusion and diversity and how to make the process of achieving, whether it's a position in a college or in medical school or a faculty position or tenured faculty position, we want to make it more equitable. And for me, when I think about what is holding this group of people back from achieving those positions, I think a lot of it comes down to the way that they interact and the unconscious expectations that we have of people in those positions based upon the people who have historically had those positions. And it's something that I've had to learn myself, which is the reason why I try to tell my students about it as much as possible, because I think the sooner I tell them about it, the more likely they are to have an easier time than I had. But, in residency and fellowship, right, I often found that the ways and the values that, the ways of behavior and the values that my parents had taught me growing up weren't necessarily the things that they wanted to see from me in residency. So a good example of that is, my family from a very young age. And I don't know if this is just Iranian culture or my parents or what, but my mom in particular always told me about how important it was to tell the truth, right? You always speak the truth and you say the truth even if it hurts. Even if your voice trembles when you're saying it, you have to speak the truth because what needs to be said should be said, right? And it was like kind of the way that it was portrayed for me, it was almost as though like, yeah, sometimes people are going to say things that are hurtful, right? I'm going to say maybe some hurtful things to other people and they're going to say hurtful things to me, but it's my job, if I'm going to be a successful human being, to pause and recognize that what this person is saying has truth to it. Look past my emotions, don't be hurt by it, and recognize that there's value here. Very quickly I realized that that's not the behavior that people wanted to see in my residency. It was one where you needed to be like, and I think a lot of times like very high, even outside the United States, very high level positions are influenced by this culture of like politeness. It's almost like they would rather you be polite than be correct sometimes. And there's definitely like a proper way of saying things, okay? And for a while, for me, it felt like if I wanted to be successful, I had to like kill this part of myself. This thing that my parents had taught me, I had to get rid of it. And it was a kind of an existential crisis for me because I was like, I've pursued this career, spent so much time and effort going into this thing. And now to try to be successful in this career, I have to sacrifice a part of myself that I consider something that like was given to me by people I care about the most. And but at the same time, being in this position is something that is valuable for my community. For people around me to see me in this position and doing what I do, it helps them to believe that they can do it too. And so after a long time, I kind of like went back and forth and I worked through those emotions and I figured out, that there's a way that you can say these hard things, but saying it in a way that it's not going to be perceived as rude or mean or any of those sorts of things. And I would say that's one of the hardest skills to learn, but understanding that that's the goal is a huge step forward. I firmly believe that the people who are like CEOs, who are presidents of countries, are people who have figured out how to navigate the culture at the highest levels of society. And by society, I mean the global society, because I really think that like when you're getting up to those very high levels, I think across countries and religions, it's probably very similar. I mean, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but like in my experience, it's not that much different from what I've seen. And so I think understanding that, you know, and understanding that like being careful about how you say and do things and like recognizing those differences and being very perceptive about the people around you is a huge part of being successful. And I would say that's the biggest piece of advice that I give very frequently to students, residents, fellows, honestly, anybody who's willing to listen, because I want people to have an easier time than I had.
That's a noble thing. Thanks for sharing with us. Yeah, thank you. Very insightful way of seeing things, and I hope our audience can take advantage of this, me included.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it.
I hope so too.
You know, I was listening for this story, and also what you told before about you are feeling you like who you are, like you feel happy with who you are. I feel like to a person to feel happy with who they are or like where they are in that moment. It's very, there's much like with the feeling of doing what they like to do and seeing purpose on what they do. And I can see, at least from the time I had the opportunity to spend with you, you do what you like to do. So what are your plans? Like, what else you have plans to do, like your dreams, and what else you want to accomplish, because you already is like feeling happy about what you do, but what else you want to accomplish in your life to feel more to increase this perception in yourself,
to continue to push myself forward.
Yeah.
I don't feel happy about who I am because I feel like I've achieved everything I want to achieve. I feel happy about who I am because I think that what I've done in my life is valuable, even if it hasn't yet included all the things that I want to do. And so I think there's a sense of contentment, but it's not a sense of being like, to not moving, right? To being satisfied, overly satisfied with where I'm currently at. You know, I think that in terms of what I want to do next and where I want to go with my career and my life, I think in terms of where I want to go with my life next, honestly, I don't know. I think a lot of success in the world is much less intentional than we think it is. That's actually another thing that I try to convey to my students when I'm talking to them. Sometimes people feel this like sense of guilt for not knowing what they want to do, where they want to go. I think that sense of like not knowing what to do or where to go is very natural, right? It's hard to know what you want out of life when so much of our lives we're just figuring out who we are. You know, if you don't know who you are as a person, how are you going to figure out what you want to do with your life? And if you talk to people at the highest levels, and you know, as I progress in my career and I, you know, do more and more things and put myself out there, I have gotten the opportunity to talk to people at pretty high levels of companies and universities and things like that. And you can ask them questions about, you know, hey, how did you get to this position? How did you do this? How did you do that? And surprisingly, you might be surprised, a very large percentage of them are going to give you an answer like, well, you know, I was doing this thing and then I was working hard and I just kind of like got very good at it, and then they offered me this position, and then I just kind of did that for a while, and then I went over here and I did this, and it's like, it's very not intentional. They didn't sit down one day and say like, this is my goal and here's what I'm going to do to achieve it. All they did was just go out into the world, do what they enjoyed, try to learn to enjoy what they were doing, right? And then over time developed skills and knowledge, and then sort of naturally found themselves going up the ladder and getting to this place that they ultimately are today. And so when you ask me what my goals are, I don't know that I have a very specific goal, right? Like I'll be CEO of a hospital or dean of a medical school or go start a company, or I don't know. I honestly don't know. My goal is just, I'm going to try to enjoy the journey every single day as much as I can. Try to learn, try to grow, try to be a better person, and understand that life is going to take me where it's going to take me. And honestly, whatever happens, I'll probably be grateful for it.
That's a very good answer. Like a very good and interesting way of seeing things.
Yeah, the most successful people in the world are oftentimes people who just kind of ended up there.
Makes sense.
There's very few people that you see who became successful, who were like, knew like, this is what I want to do, and they got there. I think that's less common.
Yeah, I heard a podcast, I listened to a podcast with CEOs, like they invite CEOs, and most of them I was thinking about it, most of them didn't have like a plan to get there. They just got there, like
just
naturally.
Work hard, put yourself out there, try to learn, just try to do good work every single day. Yeah. And
that's a good
it kind of figures itself out.
That's a good piece of advice.
And trust that it will figure itself out. Don't lose faith.
Yeah. This is like in the perspective of a professional life, right? And in your personal life, what dreams you have, things you dream about it, like in your personal level, if you want to share.
Yeah. My personal life, I'm not a person who aspires to, a ton of different things. It doesn't honestly take that much to make me happy. For me in particular, like I just want to have a good relationship with my wife and my child. I want to be able to come home to my family and hang out with my daughter and my dog and play and be able to do it in a way that my mind is clear and I'm not thinking about work all the time, right? Try to be very intentional about that and purposely focus on the moments that are going to matter the most to me in the long run. I try to do things and achieve things that I know will be meaningful for my family. My parents sacrificed a lot for me to have the opportunities that I've had in my life. And I want them to know, for however long I have them on this earth, that their sacrifice was worth it. That everything that they did and all the positions that they put me in, I'm going to use them to the best of my ability to achieve whatever it is I'm supposed to achieve. And I think that's, to me, as much meaning as I need. I don't if I have a nice car or a really nice house or something, like that's good. That's cool too. Like I'll take it. Like that's fantastic. But I don't know that a car or a house is really going to be more important than any of those other things.
That's a truly inspiring perspective. I feel really happy to see and to know that the majority of people, of the guests we already had on our podcast, on our show, when we do this type of questions, most of them, the answer are pretty much the same.
It's like simple stuff.
Simple stuff, family, at first. And it's really, really inspiring to see. So, Dr. Ameli, I'm gonna let you please share anything you want with our audience, like final remarks you want to make. We are already like 1 hour in conversation. I know you had other things to do, so feel free to speak whatever you want to our audience. And
sorry, I had to check my phone.
Your message.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels kind of like so much pressure on me to like say something wise. I will say the most important things that you do in life are hard. And the fact that they're hard is the reason why they're important. If it was easy, everybody would do it, and then it would cease to be important. And so if you remember that, whenever you're trying to do something that is truly meaningful to you and to society, don't get discouraged. You know, as much as you can, focus on the fact that if this was easy, everybody would do it. And remind yourself that you're a human, and as a human being who's doing something that is challenging, you are naturally going to make mistakes and have good days and bad days. And I think you have to celebrate the good days and learn from the bad days and be forgiving to yourself and understand that you are growing and learning, and it is a process, right? And you just have to keep going to the best of your ability, and you know, every day try to be the best version of yourself, and don't spend too much time thinking of the times that you fell on your face, because ultimately we all fall on our face. It's not about falling, it's about getting up.
So I hope whoever is watching this in the future and stay with us like until the end of our conversation, had a great time, because I had a great time. I want to thank you again for like having this availability to be here. So I appreciate so much, really, from my heart, because I know that when we met people who are really really passionate about it, what they do and their lives, it's for me it's a great honor and a pleasure to have this platform to share with another people. You know, that's why we do this podcast, that's why we do this show, is to bring people to bring to other people the message from people who had things to share, good things to share. So I appreciate so much, and thank you for having me here.
Thanks for having me. And if can I plug my social media?
Yeah, sure. I was
if you
ask
want
you.
To, I just created an Instagram. My Medigator students had me create one because they want me to share the advice that I have with everyone on the internet. So on Instagram, I am Philosophood Physician. And then I also have a Twitter, which is Pouya, Pouyeh. Feel free to follow. I'll try to be helpful. Most of my advice is going to be on Instagram, though. Twitter is just medical.
The link will be on the description.
Okay.
So for our audience which are here, please, if you know someone who are interested and will take advantage from what we talk here today, please share with people. Is the way that we have to make our conversation go further and share and get to get more people connected with us. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep. Thank you.
Appreciate you.